Okay, so get this. Picture 2024, a nail-biter election night, and the whole thing hinges on, wait for it, Nebraska.
Nebraska.
I know, right? Sounds crazy. But we're diving into this wild scenario where one single electoral vote in Nebraska could actually swing the presidency to Trump.
Wow. Okay, you've got my attention. I know the Electoral College can be a bit of a head-scratcher, but lay it on me.
Exactly. And that's why we're doing a deep dive today. We're going to unpack how this whole system works, why Republicans are scrambling to change the rules, and what it means for you no matter where you live.
I'm ready.
All right, so first things first, the Electoral College. Most states are winner take all, right? Most votes win those electoral votes.
Makes sense.
But Nebraska's got its own thing going on.
Ah, yes, Nebraska. They like to be a little different, don't they? Just like Maine, they've got that unique system. They split their electoral votes by congressional district.
Exactly. Mini elections within the election. And here's where it gets really interesting, and this is what our sources are highlighting. Imagine 2024 is super close. Harris takes the usual blue states, Trump wins back some of his 2020 losses, but it all boils down to Nebraska's second congressional district.
Okay, I'm following. Nebraska's second. Didn't Biden win that one in 2020?
He did.
Yeah.
So what happens if that district flips red?
Well, according to what we've been looking at, that could be enough to give Trump those extra electoral votes and force a tie. 269 to 269.
A tie. Has that ever happened before?
Oh, it has. But we have to go way back to 1824. Talk about a blast from the past.
1824. So how would that even play out now in the 21st century?
Okay, so get this. With an electoral college tie, it goes to the House of Representatives.
A House decides.
Each state delegation gets one vote. And looking at how the House is right now, there's a good chance those Republicans could hand the win right over to Trump.
Wow. Okay, so this is serious stuff, and we're seeing it play out right now. Our sources say the GOP is pushing really hard to make Nebraska a winner-take-all state, and they're trying to do it fast before it's too late, just in case this scenario actually happens.
To lock in those electoral votes, they're saying.
Exactly. And guess who's putting on the pressure? Trump himself. He's pushing Nebraska lawmakers, and the governor, Jim Pillen, seems to be completely on board. They might even call a special session just for this. Like, everyone just woke up and realized how important these electoral college quirks really are. But here's the thing that really got me when we were reading through all this Nebraska and Maine. They didn't make this split system to be less democratic.
Yeah.
It was the opposite.
Oh, interesting.
They wanted their elections to actually reflect what people wanted, give more power to individual districts and how they vote.
Right.
Kind of ironic, isn't it? They
Right.
tried to make things fairer, and now that's exactly what some people want to get rid of.
Makes you think.
Definitely unintended consequences.
For sure.
And this is where it gets even wilder. And this little detail from the research really caught my eye.
Okay, what is it?
Because of this whole split system thing, both Trump and Harris are pouring tons of money into Omaha.
Omaha. Why Omaha?
It's Nebraska's biggest city.
Right.
And they're doing it because flipping that one single electoral vote from Omaha could change the entire election.
Wow, that's wild. But it shows you something about this system, even with its problems.
What's that?
It stops candidates from just ignoring entire states. Like, oh, that one's always red or that one's always blue.
They have to actually put in the work.
Exactly. They can't take anything for granted.
Every vote matters.
In those specific districts, yeah.
It's like their choice could have this ripple effect across the country.
A political butterfly effect.
But let's be real, this whole Nebraska thing, it's a symptom of a much bigger issue.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just one state.
It makes you wonder, is the Electoral College itself the real problem here?
The elephant in the room, right.
Yeah.
And what we keep seeing in these sources, they're saying Nebraska isn't some weird exception. It just shows how messed up the system is, where someone can get more votes overall and still lose the presidency.
We've seen it happen.
And it just totally goes against the idea of one person, one vote.
Which is, kind of important.
It's the whole point.
It makes you wonder, if you live in a state that's always red or always blue, do the candidates even care what you think?
Exactly.
Does your vote even matter as much as someone in a swing state? It's a little unsettling, honestly.
That's the core issue here, right?
Yeah.
And that's why this whole Nebraska thing is so important.
Yeah.
It's like holding up a mirror to how we choose our leaders.
And whether it's even working.
Exactly. Are we really listening to the people?
And the best part is, the sources we're looking at, they don't just point out the problems, they actually give us some ideas to think about, some other ways to do things.
Solutions, not just complaints.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
This whole focus on Nebraska, it also brings up this deadline problem in Maine.
Maine. What about it?
Remember, it's the other state that splits its electoral votes.
Oh, right, right.
Maine has this law. You have to make any changes to their election rules months in advance.
So you're saying even if Democrats wanted to do the same thing in Maine, split the votes their way,
It's already too late.
the deadline's passed.
Exactly.
So the Republicans have this advantage because of how the calendar worked out.
They can change things in Nebraska, but the Democrats can't counter in Maine.
Adds a whole other layer to this, doesn't it?
For sure.
It shows you how strategic this all is.
Oh, yeah.
Both sides trying to play the system, find those loopholes.
And Nebraska's right in the middle of it.
Front and center.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But I think it boils down to this. If we really want a fair system where every vote counts the same no matter where you live,
Yeah.
then we got to look at this electoral college thing. And if it's even doing what it's supposed to,
I agree.
Nebraska might just be the tipping point.
It's making everyone pay attention, that's for sure.
Exactly.
And those are conversations we need to have.
100%. So we've talked about how close this election could be, a potential tie, the House deciding. I mean, it's a lot. Is there any way to just avoid all this?
Well, there are a few ideas out there, reforms that people have been talking about for a while. One is a national popular vote.
Okay, so the person who gets the most votes overall, they win. Simple as that.
Exactly. No more electoral college math to figure out.
Seems pretty straightforward. What's the downside?
Some people say it would make individual states less important, especially smaller ones. Candidates might just focus on those big cities with lots of voters.
And ignore everyone else.
Right. Rural areas, smaller states, they might feel like their voices aren't being heard.
Yeah, that makes sense. What other options are there?
There's this thing called the National Compact. Basically, states would agree to give their electoral votes to whoever wins the national popular vote.
Okay.
It only works if enough states sign on to make sure that the popular vote winner actually becomes president.
So it's like a way to get around the electoral college without totally getting rid of it.
Exactly. Keep the structure, but make sure the person with the most votes actually wins.
Interesting. It seems like there are definitely some ideas out there. But no matter what happens with the Electoral College, this whole Nebraska situation makes you think about how involved voters really are. If campaigns might start targeting specific places more, what does that even mean for regular voters?
It's a great question. And it comes down to paying attention to those local elections no matter what. Congressional races, state legislatures. Those decisions actually affect your daily life more than you might think.
It's easy to get caught up in the presidential election and forget about everything else.
For sure, but those local elections, they decide things like schools, healthcare, even how your vote gets counted.
It's like being a good citizen means being informed and voting in every election, not just every 4 years.
Exactly.
So to wrap all this up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
The Electoral College isn't just some abstract idea. What's happening in Nebraska proves that. Whether you agree with these reforms or not, understanding how the system works, its flaws, how it affects elections big and small, that's crucial for every single voter.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From one little electoral vote in Nebraska to the whole future of how we vote. It's a conversation that's not going away anytime soon. Hopefully this deep dive gave you the information you need to be part of that conversation and to really think critically about this upcoming election. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.